Welcome to Legato Home. The door is open. Come inside. Here you'll find inspiration to create a home that's beautiful, organized, and nurturing to all who enter. I'm so glad you're here. Together, we'll create connection by design. Thanks for joining me today on Legato Home. So today's topic is going to be the first installment on the series, The Connection Between Wellness and Design. So let's start by talking about wellness. What does wellness even mean? I think it's kind of a buzzword in the communities around health and fitness. We often hear wellness referred to in context of whether we're eating healthy, if we're exercising. But the thing that I really want to shed light on today is the fact that wellness is also very connected to our environment. And I care about that because I'm all about building homes that support my clients, my friends, and my family. So, wellness, simply defined, is the state of being in good health. So, we're going to look at how can our homes help us be in just the place where we are able to be our very best versions of ourselves. So, over the next couple weeks, we're going to be just looking at some different ways that we can really thrive. And that is my heart here, that this would be a place that we would find ways that we can just be really successful in our life. So, I want to support you in all that I can. So, as we talk about wellness, the first topic that I want to talk about is how do we bring nature into our spaces? And I'll tell you why. When I look all the way back to the very beginning, and I mean the very beginning, I love to open my Bible. And I think the very first story is one of my favorites, the story of creation. And we're going to use that as our framework as we have this conversation. So in Genesis 1:8, it says, "Then the Lord God planted a garden in Eden in the east, and there he placed the man he had made. The Lord God made all sorts of trees to grow up from the ground, trees that were beautiful and produced delicious fruit." I just want to pause here for a minute and think about what this verse is saying. Let's break it down. So, first of all, God planted a garden. I love the intentionality behind this. The fact that God designed and planted a garden in a very specific place for men and women to thrive. I think this is so thoughtful, and it makes me think of the character of God that is shown throughout the scripture, that he really wants human beings to thrive. And so that picture of God just saying, I want this tree there and that flower there, is so beautiful. And then that he placed man there. So he intentionally put man in the center of where he thought he would be most likely to just live their very best life. And then that God put trees that were beautiful. Can we just pause there? I think that I could have an entire episode on this, and I may, but I love the thought that God appreciates beauty. I will be honest and say that when I have pursued design as my passion in my career, there are times when I ask, is what I do frivolous? Does it fall into the category of wants versus needs? Is it necessary? But all throughout the Bible, we see this theme of beauty, and it originates from God, who was a creator, and we are made in the image of God. And as his image bearers, it is natural for us to want things that are beautiful and to have that permission to embrace beauty. God could have put them in the middle of a black and white concrete box, but he didn't. He put them in the center of trees that were beautiful. And then he made what we eat be delicious. I know that sounds simple, but delicious fruit. There is nothing that I love more than fruit. If you gave me one item, and I've actually done this before, that I could pick for my birthday treat, I have gone into Meijer on my birthday and said to myself, you can buy any one thing. You know what I buy? A box of raspberries. That is really my favorite thing. It's a box of berries. I think that's one of life's greatest luxuries. And so again, God could have made us like pull up to a gas pump type thing that would just fill us up and we would check the box, make sure that our gauges didn't get low, but he didn't. He gave us food that's delicious and also beautiful. Some of my favorite wallpapers have strawberries and flowers and vines and things that are inspired by nature. So when we look at this verse, it helps us to see what God, who made us, intended for us to live in. So in the world before it was broken, before there was sin, God placed us in a garden. And so that is why in these first several conversations, we're going to be breaking down different elements of nature that we can use for inspiration in our homes. Because I think that that makes perfect sense of what we should use because God was our model. So as I was thinking about this and preparing for it, I thought about when are there times that I have been really immersed in nature? And the thing that came to my mind, first of all, was looking back to my childhood. And one of the things that marked the highlight of my summer every year was I had the privilege of going to camp. I live in Michigan and super lucky to have gone to a camp near Traverse City, which, if you know anything about the United States of America, you know that Traverse City and northern Michigan is some of God's most beautiful country. And so I would go up to camp, and I remember one particular year being extra special. There was predicted to be a meteor shower that night. And so the counselors allowed us to sleep out under the stars. We literally took our sleeping bags and we put them in the soccer field and we slept in the field. I don't think we slept very much though, because there were shooting stars like I've never seen before or after. And it was this amazing thing where we would just yell out, "There's another one. Look over here. There's another one." And it was so magical and so worshipful. I remember singing praise music and just feeling near to God as I watched the stars in that magnificent sky. Also at camp, we would spend afternoons tromping through the woods and we would be careful to stay on the path so that we didn't trample down any ferns or small tender plants. We would also spend a lot of time in the lake, at the water, and then in the evenings we would have a fire where we would gather sticks and roast hot dogs and marshmallows. And it was just this immersion in nature time. And in that, there was this feeling of a nearness to our Creator and also just great biblical truth. And it is at camp that I made the majority of my milestone decisions in my Christian walk. And that was definitely a place where I was able to thrive. And I am so thankful for that memory. And I thought about, okay, what do we think about now that I'm an adult? Is that still true? Or was that just something that happened at camp? And still to this day, if I am looking at my most favorite memories, my family also camps in the summer. We have a camping trailer and we park it in the woods or next to the beach. That's really my favorite, is to live at the beach. And we spend days in the sunshine. We bike trails, we go for walks. And that is something that I look forward to all year long. And just for fun, I did a Google search on favorite vacation spots. And when I was looking through this lens of nature, it was interesting to see that every single top vacation spot had something to do with nature. There were beach vacations where you go to the ocean or the lake. There were mountain vacations or forest and hiking vacations. And really, all of the top destinations had something to do with being outdoors and in nature. There is something restorative about nature. It's where we go to recharge, to escape, and if we could take that we leave for to go on vacation and bring it into our homes and into our daily lives, I just think that that would encourage so much wellness of our mind, our bodies, and our souls. So, what are some elements from nature that we can bring into our home environments? Let's pause there with the word environments. I think sometimes we overlook the importance of our environment. I want to use the example of a plant. So, if you have a plant and you take it and you raise it in a greenhouse where it's sunny and warm and it has all the right moisture and there's no pests, it does great. And greenhouse plants are beautiful and big and gorgeous. If I took that same plant and I tried to raise it on my deck right now in January in the middle of a snowstorm in Michigan, it would die because the environment matters. And I think that's the same in our homes. And I think sometimes we get so used to what we have around us that we forget to look closely. We forget to see, is this a place where I can thrive? And there's some really practical elements there that our homes are warm and safe and keep us away from the elements of outside. But there's also some aesthetic things that are just cues to how people thrive. So the first one I want to talk about is light. So if you were to ask me my most favorite element in design, I would say lighting. Well, light overall. First of all, natural light, and then secondly, light fixtures. I just love, and I think they make such a big impact. If we circle back to that creation story in Genesis 1:3, it says, "Then God said, 'Let there be light.' And there was light. And God saw that the light was good." It was good. Light is good. Do you ever realize, like on a gray day, feel this so much in the wintertime, and the sun peeks through it, and you're like, oh my goodness, I forgot how good that feels. And you're just drawn to the light. Light is good. And again, in design, it's just so good for us. I want to tell a little story about a client that I had. Her name is Holly. And Holly had a very nice home, but her kitchen layout was frustrating. It was kind of a U shape, and on the far edge was her refrigerator, and it was placed so tight to the wall that you could not fully open the doors, which meant that you also could not fully extend her crisper drawers to get out fruits and vegetables. Very frustrating. She also had a sink in the corner, and it was kind of looking out into no man's land as it was just floating in the corner of this cabinet layout. And so we looked at Holly's layout, completely reworked it, and made it so that her sink would be looking to the outdoors. And that was probably my favorite thing that we did. And we cut a large window as big as we could into the side of her house and let the light in. And it was so transformational. And that kitchen was lovely when it was finished. So the fun thing about Holly is, I don't know how much time it was, maybe a year after that, she called me and said, "We've moved." And so they invited me to their new house, and they were super excited about it. It had a lot of features that we couldn't change in the last house. It had a main floor bedroom in the new house. It had more storage. And yet it had this kitchen that felt dark. It was in an interior kitchen. It literally had no windows in the kitchen. So she said, "We've done it before. Let's do it again." So in her new house, we actually cut in 2 windows, one over the kitchen sink and then a large one in her dining area, and completely changed how her home felt. And there is just something so wonderful about bringing in natural light. So if you're feeling like, I can't quite put my finger on it, but there's something in my house and I don't like the feeling, maybe it does feel dark or a little depressing or you just don't like the feeling of it, it's often solved by adding light and especially natural light. And I am surprised, I will be honest. I will say to my contractor, this feels like a big ask to cut in a window. And they seem pretty unfazed by it. It's not as hard to add a window for them, of course, not for me, as you would think. So it is not impossible. So if you are wondering, could I add a window here? Could I make this window larger? In my experience, the answer has been yes, and it's been so worth the investment. So adding natural light is a wonderful way to improve your home. And then I would say also adding different layers of light. So when I'm looking kind of room by room, let's start in the kitchen. I love to add as many places where I can have different lighting options as possible. So things like under cabinet lighting. If I have glass cabinets, putting it inside the cabinets so that at night I can leave it on like a night light and it just has that warm, cozy glow about it. I'll often put a lamp on a counter or instead of upper cabinets, maybe cut out that large window. In a bathroom, of course, we have the vanity fixtures and we can have so much fun with that. If you're feeling like your home is dated, that's a fun place to change it. Or adding sconces. Something I've been doing in a lot of new construction and remodeling projects lately is putting a transom window in the shower. So, oftentimes, a shower is an internal space, and so it can start to feel a little bit like a cave. And so, by adding a transom window in that space, you place it high enough where you still have privacy, but you get that natural light, and it completely changes the way that it feels. In a living room, I absolutely love to add a chandelier. So, I have done this before, and just feel like it transforms the way that a home feels. Um, Also, adding little task lamps is very charming and also makes it so that a space functions really well. I would say lamps are also a great thing to consider. Just adding lamps can really change how it feels. There is something so inviting about pulling up to a home at night and you see that lamp in the window that just says welcome. I think there's something nostalgic about that. It feels like when you're returning home, there is someone waiting for you, and that has this just lovely feeling. I like to put lamps in unexpected places. So I currently have a lamp in my laundry room. I have a teeny tiny counter. It's probably only 18 inches big. So I have a small little lamp, but sometimes I don't want the overhead light on and I just want it to be warm and cozy. And I turn on the lamp in there and I love that. It's also off of our back door. So if I want to leave a light on, it acts as a little night light, which is really practical as well. You can get tiny lamps, even ones that are battery operated these days or rechargeable, and put them on a bathroom counter, on a bookshelf. So adding lamps in unexpected places really levels up the design of your home as well as that feeling of warmth and coziness. I also think that lighting is a wonderful place to update your home. So, a big part of what I do in my job is home staging. So, when I'm doing the home staging, people will ask me if they should do updates on their house before they list it. And a lot of times we're on a tight timeline or a small budget and we need to just get it turned around. And if I can only choose one thing, I often choose lighting. Because if I walk into a house and it has really updated lighting, it looks well maintained, it helps the house look like it's in style. And so it gives this message to potential buyers that the house has been taken care of. And that is super important messaging. It also only requires one contractor. So all you have to have is an electrician, and it's not very messy. So, unlike anything involving drywall or painting, that is a very simple, easy fix. So let's take a minute here and talk a little bit technically about lighting. People will sometimes ask me what color of light I like. So Lighting is put onto a scale, the Kelvin scale actually, of color temperature. And a very warm light, you would equate it to like a candlelight that's orangey yellow, very warm in color, is going to be low on the Kelvin scale. So think of 0 as being very, very orangey yellow warm. On the opposite end is going to be very cool light. So think blue, bright, very, very intense. And it goes all the way up to 5,000. So 0 to 5,000. If I were only allowed to pick one number as I was buying light bulbs, I would pick something in the 2,700 to 3,000 temperature. Now, technically, that's called a soft white. I like it because it still has warmth, but it's not going to change like your paint colors and your whites to where they're feeling orangey or yellow. So you still feel like you have true color. Sometimes even when I drive by someone's house and I see that surgical room kind of brightness coming out, I think, oh, you could just change the way that your body feels by warming up that light a little bit. Now, there are places where that brighter light is welcomed. So if you have a place where you're doing careful, fine detail work, you're going to get a brighter, truer light out of a higher number. So you may want to look more into those higher numbers. But for the most part, I like that soft white. Another thing that we want to be mindful of is that all bulbs are matching. So I don't know if you've seen this before, but sometimes in a bathroom, you might have 3 to 5 bulbs all in one fixture. And if one of those is very cool and one is warm, it just gives this lack of cohesion. And by just matching all of those color temperatures with the exact same bulb, you're going to level up the design and the way that your home looks. It will look more expensive, more custom. Um, Another thing you want to be mindful of is how bright something is. So if I have an oversized foyer, for example, I don't want to put a single bulb pendant hanging down that only gives off a little bit of light. So if I have a bigger space, I want more bulbs and more light output. Another thing to think about when we are working with light is that you have layers of light. So different situations call for different amounts of light. And I love to layer on the light. So you can do, typically, I like to include 3 layers of light in every space. Those layers are overhead, ambient, and task lighting. So let me give you an example. Overhead, I may have some recessed lighting and perhaps a chandelier. So that's my overhead. Ambient lighting is going to be my lamps. So they give that warm glow that feels cozy and decorative. And then task lighting might be like a reading light that goes over the arm of a chair that shines directly on my book or my crochet or whatever it is that you like to work on. And having those available, you can also set different moods with that, depending on if you have all the lights on or just the ambient lighting. It will allow different scenarios and different situations. I also recommend always putting lights on a dimmer. I have dimmers on almost every switch in my house. And I find that they are rarely all the way up unless I'm working on something. So, for example, in my kitchen, I have dimmers. And sometimes if I'm baking bread or doing things where I am task oriented, I want all the light because I want to see good. But if we're sitting down to dinner, I don't want it to be glaring. I want it to just be that softer light. And so installing dimmers is a great way to be able to control the light. Here's another thing. When we think about creation and nature and bringing nature into our house, a dimmer is a tool that we can use to mimic nature. Let me explain. When we get up in the morning, I don't know about you, but I just have to rise slowly. I'm the girl that hits the snooze at least once. And then I like to go into my closet and keep just the smallest light on. So if we can use a dimmer to like mimic the sun so that it starts low, and then as it goes throughout the day, maybe you do turn that light on full powered when you need to be wide awake, focusing on a project, maybe doing careful work. And then as the night winds down, there is science behind copying that circadian rhythm in our homes with our light. And that is a way that we can use artificial lights to mimic nature and encourage our wellness so that by the time it's time to go to sleep, our body knows. It's had those cues of it's time to go to bed now. It's dark and it's time to take a break. So, using dimmers as a tool is really, really helpful. One of the things that I love about lighting is that you can change the style of a home with lighting. So, I think of a couple of different projects here. Um, I recently did a project on Lake Makatawa. It's an inland lake here in our area, and everything there spoke to the lake. We had rattans and linens and all of these kind of beachy feeling materials. And that set the tone for that project. I did another project soon after that that was super contemporary. This client wanted everything to be very minimalist, clean lines. So, for example, above her island was a single LED light that was just like an outline floating in space. It was actually quite stunning in its simplicity. But had I put something with more ornate details, something more traditional, that home could have taken on a completely different feeling. So if you're seeing things that you like, maybe you're inspired by different magazines or Pinterest or Instagram accounts, and you're like, oh, I love how that traditional style is coming back, or I love the clean lines of this one. Start with your lighting, and you would be surprised how it can change the tone of your design style in your home. So I'd like to circle back to where we started. I think it's fun to realize that in our Bibles, the very first words that we have recorded God ever saying is when God said, "Let there be light." And there was light, and God saw that the light was good. The light was good. I love that. My hope is that my home would radiate light, both literally and figuratively. That it would be a place that when you drive up, it's warm and welcoming from the street. That when you enter, you feel genuinely cared for and loved. That in my home, you would find a place of sincere connection. So I'd like to close with a question, because I think that it's all well and good to listen to something, but my hope is that in each episode, you would have something that you could take away. A question that you could share with a friend or something that you would take action on. So actually 2 questions today. On a practical side, where could you add the warmth of light in your home? Maybe you just want to change the color temperature of your light bulbs. Or maybe it's time you run to Target and get a cute little lamp that you're going to put on your kitchen counter to make it feel cozy in the middle of this season. Or another question, how can we shine our light into the world today? So Jesus calls us to be salt and light. And we are light when we share his love with others. So that is my hope for you today. Our one word that we would get to take into this week is the word light. So I am just hoping that each of us can be a bright spot in the people that are around us and that our homes would radiate light to those who enter.